Is it weird dating a psychologist? Would you always feel like you're being hyper-analyzed by your partner?
Yo, I'd be like, I can't say shit. I'm just going to nod.
Welcome to the Worst Asian Podcast, where a couple Asian American millennials give you our shitty opinions on all things Asian. My name is Lingjie. I'm here with my co-host as per usual, Ben.
Yo, how are you?
Do you know what month it is right now?
Yeah, it's May.
That
took a while.
Okay, it's May, but it is also AAPI Heritage Month.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Do you know what else it is this month?
It's almost June.
Technically true, yes. It's almost June. It is also Mental Health Awareness Month.
Okay, that's true. You're right.
I think we both need to get our heads checked a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely need to do that.
There's a lot going on in my head that needs to get checked out.
Not for me, but yeah.
Well, we have someone on today that's going to do all that for us.
Mm-hmm.
Years of schoolwork, years of dedication, years of hard work have led her to the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
TikTok fame. Aside from that, you've seen her on various different places like BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, Complex, and now onto this podcast. Let's welcome onto the podcast, PhD, licensed clinical psychologist, and fellow black coffee lover, Dr. Han Ren.
Woo!
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
For our listeners out there, besides being TikTok famous, do you want to tell them what else you're up to these days?
I'm a psychologist. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I am in private practice. I have a group practice. And I'm working on some writing and some speaking and trying to stay alive in current conditions.
I like that.
One thing I saw, and we're kind of already going off tangent. I saw the video you posted of that possum that you caught.
Oh, yeah, I did. That was the proudest moment of my life. I'm going to say that.
You were stuck at home during quarantine, and this was like the beginning phase of quarantine, right?
Yep.
And I'm not sure how things are in Texas, but apparently you got a possum into your apartment, into your house.
Yeah. So we have a dog door, and it was deep quarantine, May 2020, and my dog started barking, went inside, thought she was senile, was picking up toys, and I trip over this possum.
Oh,
and
shit.
I thought it was dead. But it got me, it was possum playing possum.
Oh my God. It was actually possum playing possum.
I went to, scoop it up and was just casually strolling away and was in the house overnight. I screamed really loudly, woke up the fam and had to put the kids back to bed. The next morning, had to trap the thing because I wasn't going to have an exterminator come into the house and risk pandemic.
Right, because it was the first couple months. Yeah. We're all being extra cautious there.
Were the kids a little excited? Like, oh, mom bought a new pet.
They were excited. They were scared, but they were like, this is the most exciting thing that's happened to us in months. Because, we're all just stuck at home, not doing anything. So that was some zest.
What do you do with the possum after you catch it? Do you just release it back into the backyard? Because you never know. Yeah. It just might come back.
That's true. I was a little scared. I brought it out and let him go and he just skittered off. It was a young one. It wasn't one of those ginormous, it was still scary, but it was young. It was little.
I was going to say, possums get really huge.
They get really huge.
I saw your picture when you're holding it and stuff. You're like, yeah, this is it. It's like a little Pokemon and shit. It's like, yes, I caught it.
It kind of was like catching a Pokemon.
Yeah. I bet the possum was like, oh, this was a really nice Airbnb stay.
Nice experience.
The host picked me up.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
Easy.
Okay. It's a great month, both in the sense that we're celebrating our AAPI heritage and we're getting to talk more openly about mental health awareness. So where those two crossroads meet, I thought it would be great for you to come on. But I guess first we should probably address the main question is, or at least this would set the foundation for what we're talking about today, because there is this preconceived notion that within our community, there is a lack of importance put on to mental health. Do you know if it's true that statistically speaking, and we're not about the hard facts here, of course.
Nah, we don't do. Google's not real.
Are Asian Americans typically less likely to seek mental health than the rest of the general population?
Absolutely. Like the statistics, I can't cite them off the top of my head, but it's like way less. And also the number one leading cause of death for Asian Americans between the ages of like 15 and 45 is suicide.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
I did not know
it's
that.
a big problem. Yeah. It's especially the past year or so, it's just been really bad.
I know, especially with like COVID that happened, the younger generation, especially, they're getting, hit hard.
It's a crisis.
They have a harder time adjusting to being stuck at home for such an extended period of time.
Right, exactly.
Do you think some of that has to do with a lot of our certain stigmas that are deeply enrooted in our culture?
Yeah, there's a lot of saving face, a lot of don't take up too much space, don't have needs, put the family and the collective needs over your own. It's not that bad. It's not as bad compared to others. Like there's so many just beliefs that we have internalized that leads to a lot of young Asian people suffering in silence.
To be honest, I was thinking about this question. I don't think I've ever openly talked about either my own mental health or the mental health of my family members directly with each other. Most of the time, if, let's say, the subject came up, it would just be super quickly brushed off.
Right. It's like, oh, maybe he's just having a bad day, or there's just, it's no big deal. It's just, rub it off. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Wipe the dust off.
Have you seen that happen with a lot of your clients that you deal with that are within that community?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. And what's so interesting is that for our community, it's way more acceptable to have physical pains. So it shows up as like my stomach hurts, I can't sleep, I'm dizzy. So a lot of times people come to me for the first time, especially first generation Asian Americans, because they went to their medical doctor. They got their eyes checked because their visions were gray, or they went to a gastro because they couldn't stop throwing up and they couldn't find any physiological cause for what was going on. So, panic is another big one because people think that they're having a heart attack. They think they're dying and they get their heart checked out and it's not a heart condition. And so people come to me after they kind of rolled off all of these medical, physical ailments and then realize, okay, it's all connected.
That makes sense.
That's so strange because my parents worry so much about my physical health. And I just saw my mom yesterday after not seeing her so long because I was in quarantine. And she looked at the side of my face and said, oh, you're really starting to break out in that one patch right by your jawline.
Yeah.
And she kept asking questions for like 5-10 minutes. So, clearly they care about my health.
Yeah.
But I don't think they would ever dive that deeply if I was, let's say, just appeared like I was emotionally down.
I think our parents have they know how to take care of us. Oh, you're not feeling well if you have a fever or maybe your stomach's upset. But then it's like, oh man, I'm going through a breakup. And they just don't know what to do or like how to approach them about it because they don't want to appear weak.
Mm-hmm. They don't have the vernacular. Yeah, they don't have the tools.
Do you notice a uptick now with like the current generation of Asians and Asian Americans seeking mental health?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more normalized, which is great, but also it's like becoming a crisis. People don't have alternative, ways to cope, with the pandemic, with all of these racially charged, Asian hate that's been going on.
Especially.
All of these things together, like people are like, oh shit, like I better get this looked at, I better do something about it.
Yeah.
And realizing that this isn't something they can just, grit their teeth through. And they shouldn't have to.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you about that. I always try to stress with my friends, especially like my Asian friends, like encourage like open dialogue. I'm obviously not, a professional like you, but I do try to say like first step is just trying to admit that you do need help.
We're stubborn as is, just personality wise.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes being an Asian male, and this is just me speaking for myself, I'm not trying to speak for anybody else. But I'm so stubborn to the point where if I can handle it myself, being alone itself is kind of like rebranded in my mind as being strong.
Yeah, like stoicism. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I think a lot of people just need some psychoeducation. Just like, how do I describe what is going on? Like a huge part of what is helpful about therapy is just having someone facilitate the process of putting your experiences into words. When you don't grow up with that, when you don't have, your parents talking about their feelings, talking about, their experiences, your experiences, you just generally don't know what you're feeling. It's like happy, sad, mad. That's it. There's no nuance, right?
It's like a very narrow spectrum.
Right.
That's like going to a hospital on a scale of like 0 to 10 with the smileys.
Yeah. It's like
and they're like, how do you feel? Which one?
But there's only like 2 faces there.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really what it's like. People don't have the words to put their experiences into words.
Yeah.
And so, helping them normalize that process, being able to find that nuance, and then like just having someone like hold space and bear witness to to your suffering, to your experiences is so powerful. Like, wow, I feel seen. I feel heard. And that in itself is so healing. And then from there, we can untangle this web, and it's never just one thing. It's like, nature, nurture, intergenerational trauma. I mean, we as Asians, people of the Asian diaspora, like just have so much generational trauma that our ancestors have, put forth before us.
Yeah, exactly. If I had a really stubborn friend, like the one that's next to me right now, and he needed to speak with someone, what way do you think I should approach him to get him to seek help?
Just general concern, like, hey, are you okay? Like, really, are you okay?
Yeah, are you okay,
What's
dude?
going on? Let's talk about it. And then also like normalizing your own experiences. Like if you have been to therapy or if you've sought help in any way, like this is what I did and it was so helpful, and talking about it. I think that is probably the number one best thing that we can do to make this safer for our peers. Like posting on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Like I see my therapist, even though nothing terrible is going on, because it's part of my wellness. It's part of how it's like going to the gym.
Yeah.
And if we share our own experiences with it, it just destigmatizes it for others.
I don't know if you knew, but I went to therapy when I was younger because I was suffering from a lot of like anger issues and, it stemmed from like my family. And I'm so grateful for it because I'm like, wow, it really saved my life because I might have handled it in a different way. There's another stigma about that too, right? People think if you take therapy, especially in the Asian community, you're like, oh, they must be fucking weird.
Or you're seen as lesser than, or you're weak.
Yeah, exactly. And we got to change that.
Yeah, but it's hard to combat someone who has that very strong feeling, right? Like, how do you tell someone, hey, this doesn't make you less of a man, less of a person?
Yeah.
I mean, one way is just like, so these are things you've been trying. Is it working for you? Like, why are you choosing to suffer? Because if you have these accessible other tools or ways to help yourself feel better and you're not choosing them, then you're basically choosing to suffer.
If you had a stomach ache and you had diarrhea, you would clearly go get some Pepto-Bismol, right?
Yeah, like why would you not? Like what are the side effects? Like you have nothing to lose when it comes to trying therapy or getting mental health care. Like if it doesn't work for you, okay, cool. Like do something else. And therapy doesn't have a monopoly on healing either. Like, okay, fine, you don't want to go to therapy, like go to yoga, take a meditation class, get some acupuncture, go join an exercise group. Like there's all these different ways that we can take care of ourselves that incorporate our mental health without like specifically saying this is the small box.
Yeah, because I think sometimes when you don't know enough about exactly what therapy even is, then you're even more reluctant to seek that help.
Yeah.
Piggybacking on what Ben said, I haven't told this to a lot of people, but I got some help during the beginning of quarantine as well. But I'll be honest, it's hard to admit that you need help because you think that it's something that you should be able to deal with yourself. I think because in my life, I've never been put in a position to even discuss my mental health. With my Chinese parents, we've never even had that discussion about how you're feeling or how I'm feeling.
Right.
We can talk about what you did yesterday. Hey, mom, this cooking is great. When you see the grandkids, but I never genuinely asked my parents, how are you doing emotionally these days?
I do remember when you brought it up to us finally, when you said like, hey, I'm seeking therapy and stuff. And the first thing I thought, I was like, damn, first, I was surprised and I was like, damn, I hope you're okay.
Were you surprised? Because I am stubborn as hell.
All right, so Doc, I've known this guy since we were kids, right? I don't want to put labels on it, but like, I wish there's some things I look at Lingjie, I'm like, man, how the hell does he just do it? Like
thank you. I'll Venmo you later.
Yeah, there you go. It's not paid or anything, but and sometimes I'm like, man, like he just doesn't make excuses. So when you admit it, I had to seek help. I was like, oh man, dude, like wow.
I mean, I want to highlight how common that is in our community because for Asian people, especially historically within our homeland communities, like in the Asian communities, but also as Asian Americans, overwork is one of the greatest, most common ways that our trauma shows up. Yeah. Overwork, perfectionism, people pleasing. Yeah. And like, if you think about like the invisibilization of Asian Americans historically and like, what do? Oh, we just work harder, right? Like,
yeah,
that is just in our, cultural tropes.
100%.
And yeah, like what else can you do? Let's do this. But what if that wasn't required or the only way or necessary? What if it doesn't actually have to be that hard?
We feel like being invisible kind of keeps us safe. If you're not seen, especially when you're trying to like, I always say this, but a lot of first generation Asian households are just trying to get by. You're just focusing on a single task. So you're putting your head down, you have your blinders on. And the last thing on your mind is to stop for a second and reevaluate how you're doing emotionally.
But if you think about like the past 2 years, like where has that gotten us, right? Like this invisibilization, this model minority, like has it kept us safe? No.
That's true too. Everything going on with Asian hate these days exasperates the problems that we have already had.
Yeah. So it's not working. Like, let's try something else.
Exactly. Doc, can I ask you then, I guess, some everything we're talking about, is that why you became, a psychologist?
Yeah. So it's like, it's so funny because people would ask me this, like, throughout my career. And like when I was younger, before I was like more able to hold my own shit and be transparent about it, I was like, I just want to help people and like, have these conversations and normalize it. But like, honestly, so many therapists become therapists to better understand themselves and their families. Because like, we see firsthand the effects of this stigma, the toxicity of like the generational trauma. And like, growing up for me personally, I had a lot of attachment disruptions where my parents went to the US when I was 2 and left me with my grandparents who raised me. So I was a satellite kid, which is very common.
Yes, it is.
And then when I was 5, I came to the US without my grandparents. So like had no memory of my parents, but went to live with them. And then they were going through a really messy divorce. I knew from a young age, I'm like, this doesn't feel normal. Like I just knew that I had, a different viewpoint on childhood and life than most of my peers. And I always found that to be very curious. And so, growing up, that was something that I really sought to better understand. I'm like, this can't be normal.
So has that shaped how you actually practice right now?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of my my framework and my orientation of how I practice therapy is relational, is attachment based. It's interpersonal, where I think what is harmed in relationships is healed in relationships. What is harmed in community is healed in community. And so much of the way that I work with my clients, it's not just like skills building, but like being in a secure, solidly attached relationship with me is part of the healing. Because a lot of us, we don't have that secure relationship with our caregivers. We have had all of these attachment disruptions. And so to have this like earned secure attachment, this corrective emotional experience with a therapist who looks like them and who has had similar experiences can be so healing.
My therapist was also Asian. And I didn't think about this in the moment, but to me, it felt a bit more, what vocab word that I'm trying to look for. It felt a bit more personal to see someone that looked like me.
Yeah, like resonant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
PhD right there. All that hard work.
And do you do a lot of clients that are in the Asian community?
Yeah, most of my clients are people of color. I think especially in a place like Austin, where we're pretty like progressive and liberal, but also very white. It's such a white city. And I think sometimes it can be more toxic when people think they're so liberal and progressive because they're just more fragile.
They're so woke.
And that extends to therapists as well, where like people think like, oh yeah, I'm culturally competent, like I can work with these different communities, but then like not actually knowing the nuance and ins and outs of, a lot of communities of color come from collectivist orientations, and it's very different in what could work relationally for our communities compared to white communities.
Do you ever find yourself learning a lot from your clients as well?
Oh, absolutely. They're my greatest teachers. Yeah.
Wow.
I wanted to go over some of the stigmas that we previously talked about, just to make sure, because I know everyone's in a unique situation, and I want to just make sure I get to some of the more broader topics so that they can relate to some part of this. I do want to say, and this is not a joke, the number one biggest problem is access, as in healthcare.
Yeah.
Can we just like say that is...
Let's name it. Yeah. Like healthcare is fucked. Like especially mental health care in this country. It's terrible.
Right. It's a hard thing to navigate. And that's me saying this with the privilege of having insurance already. But there's a lot of people out there that don't have paid insurance or free insurance, and they're trying to seek help. So that lack of access is probably the biggest factor.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I got to also say, like, talking about the ease and like just trying to find help. Because I think everyone has this like outdated mentality of like mental health. some people probably think of like Goodwill Hunting or something. You know what I mean?
Great
Yeah.
movie, by the way.
Yeah, great movie, one of the classics. But I don't think people realize there's people like Dr. Han Ren. Yo, you're mad cool, yo. Like you're chill. You know, I want to get to know her. I feel like we can have a beer with her.
Right.
Yeah.
Off the
Love
clock.
that.
And I think that's the thing. It's just spread the message.
Going back to the things again, in terms of these stigmas, there's this fight that always goes on between happiness and success. And I think with Asian people, it's always heavily skewed towards success over happiness.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a big one. You know, my like clinical niche is like I specialize in perfectionism and overthinking overachievers. So a lot of people come to me and they're like, you know, 1 or 2 decades into their careers and they've like reached all of their check boxes of success, like house, job, kids, all of that. But then they're miserable. They're so anxious. They're in these golden handcuffs and they have such a hard time separating success from happiness. And you know, I think so much of what, you know, that work looks like is like, okay, what are the elements of like this life that you actually deem to be successful by your own standards? Like making sense of what you want. Like, I think so much of this work is like learning to listen to your body and learning to listen to your intuition and then trusting yourself enough to act on it. And there's trade-offs for all of it, but at what cost is your quote unquote success having on your quality of life, on your happiness?
People that get to that endpoint per se have checked off all the boxes, have made their Asian parents very, very happy, but then they're stuck there and they don't know what to do with themselves.
Right.
And I think like another part of it is when you are used to just like go, go, go your whole life, like next benchmark, moving goalposts constantly, even when you like reach it, you don't know how on a nervous system level to like rest and calm down and play and relax. Like you just don't know how to do it. And so it's like, okay, well, I've reached these things. I guess I need to find the next goalpost, the next like pinnacle. And then that you do it because it's out of habit. And like the process of slowing down is so uncomfortable and unfamiliar to you.
That's true.
And like, do you really want to wait until you're what, like 65 and retired to be like, oh, now I'm going to take a vacation or like have a hobby? And people who do that, sometimes they get to that point, they go back to work because they don't know
Because they're bored, because they have nothing else to do.
Yeah. And so it's like, how do you learn to chill before you're 65?
I think a lot of people just have a hard time trying to enjoy the journey of reaching that benchmark. And then once you get it, how you feeling, man? It's like,
Not good.
they feel emptier.
Yeah. They're hollow.
How do we tell people to slow down then?
I mean, I think that's something you have to discover on your own, right? You have to like see the cost of not. And like maybe when you spend time with people, like talk about your own journey and process and like, you know, spend time chilling. I think there's such a internalized capitalism to that. There's this hustle culture.
That is true.
And like, whew, why? Why?
Especially younger Asian people now, there is that hustle culture mentality that's like deeply embedded. Because when you see so many people on social media appearing like they're successful,
like comparing themselves too much.
You're comparing yourself to them and then you're trying to run as fast as them.
That's true. Doc, do you feel like Asian households, they're just trying to like be too successful and then they just get burnt out, leads to even more issues and stuff? Is that becoming like a bigger thing now?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, among my clientele, like a lot of what I see is people go to these like super rigorous middle school, high school, and they get to college and they go to college and then they like have failure to launch, right? Like they do the thing, they get the Ivy League degree, whatever, and then they like move home and they're like, oh, I can't do anything. Like they aren't able to have the skills to be independent, to know what to do next when there's not this like scaffolded like direction of, okay, this is just the, you know, logical next step. Like, oh, you have to pick a career that you want, or you have to like figure out how to adult in ways that isn't just like school and work achievement. You know, people don't know how to do that. And there is a lot of failure to launch where like then the parents freak out and, you know, then people, they're just living at home. Like, I don't know what to do. They're burnt out.
I think that goes into the next stigma. The fact that a lot of Asian people are trying to please both their parents directly or just keep face. You go to the schools, you do all this good stuff for the sake of making your family seem more prestigious.
Oh, yeah.
Honorable. Yeah.
Honorable.
Yeah. But at the same time, like you said, how do I find a job that I want as opposed to a job that would look good to my family household?
Absolutely. And it's like, it's a huge part of just like learning to know what you want, like learning to listen to your body, listen to your heart, trusting yourself, and then feeling the courage and empowerment to like act on it. A lot of times people are like, what I really want is a career and blah, blah, blah. But like, that will not be acceptable to my parents. And like, I say this as if like, I'm not also kind of a victim to that. Like,
yeah. Look where you are right now, Doc. Let's be real.
But, like, there was an expectation, right? Like, okay, you can get like a JD, MD, PhD, or maybe an MBA, right? These are the acceptable like career paths. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it in, a field that I want to do. So like my parents probably would have really preferred that I became, a physician or a lawyer. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'll get the PhD. I'll get the highest degree, but I'm going to do it in what I want to do it in. And, ultimately that was a compromise that was good.
Yeah. But that's a good balance though, because you are kind of staying in your lane to what you want to do personally. But at the same time, you're also kind of fulfilling what they want from you as well.
Yeah. And to me, that was worth it, right? Because I like school. I'm good at school. Yeah. So it was not like miserable to do that. Well, it's also safer because like I don't have to figure out what I want to do for the next year for like the next 7 years. I get to just like have this determined for me. But, like after that, it was, okay, well, what do I want to do with this actual degree in this career?
Have you ever come across people telling you that they feel like they owe their parents something?
Yeah, all the time.
Your parents took you here. Most of the time, they put themselves in a much worse situation for you to try to have a better life. So is there ever that mentality with your clients where they feel like they need to do this because they feel obligated?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to say every immigration story is a trauma story. Like even in the best case scenarios, it's like the grad student's visa, right? Like it's still a trauma story because you're leaving everything that you are hustling so hard to bring your family over here. And so, of course, there is a degree of indebtedness and nobody gets to live your life but you. So if you are living for your parents, if you're living for your children, they're not going to be happy if you're miserable. So how can you have that like collective, like the collective happiness, the collectiveness of our culture, like in the frame, but also make choices that lead to a fulfilling life for yourself? Because the more you can be happy and take care of yourself, the more everyone else in your life will also be happy.
But the hard part about that sometimes is when you're trying to combat all these stigmas that we talked about so far, sometimes it's hard to have an open dialogue with your family members about this, either because your parents unfortunately don't want to have that dialogue with you, or you just don't have the tools in your arsenal to have that dialogue with them.
Yeah, go slowly, before you have that conversation with your parents, have it with yourself, with your partner, with your friends. Like, learn how to talk about it in the context of, your own therapy, because you learn how to describe what you want and what's important to you and identify your own values. And then from there, once you have a more solid idea of what's important to you, then you can share it with other people. Right. Or you have that conversation with your friends of like, what has your journey been like and how has, this gone for you? And then you guys can support each other. Yeah. I think the more we can normalize that and like just having these real conversations with, all the relationships that we have.
I guess it's just more comes down to like just telling people and reminding them that, you're more than enough. Try to go at, like you said, go at your own pace, and try to enjoy what it is that you want to do on this, on this rock.
This is your one life, no pressure.
Zero pressure at all. When you're trying to do the reverse, let's say you have parents that you see in a situation like that. I always find it really hard, honestly, to ask my parents how they're doing emotionally sometimes. And I don't know how to approach her about her feelings without triggering stronger feelings.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a real thing. My mom has all sorts of struggles, but she will never go to therapy. And I have to accept that she will never go to therapy. And so, she kind of like sees me as, okay, well, you're the professional, like you're the expert. So you should just like dole it out. But I'm like, when I'm talking to her, I'm like, I'm your daughter. I'm not, I'm not wearing that hat, And so I think I have to really like couch it in different ways of like, okay, well, how are your hobbies? Are you eating? Are you, drinking enough water? How many walks are you taking a week? Just like things that like are a little more accessible, but can kind of soft markers of wellness in other ways. Of
That's
like,
true.
okay, like maybe we should, look at getting more houseplants or things that, bring them joy in ways that they are accessible in their language.
Do you ever feel like you get intimidated sometimes because people are like, oh, you're a therapist?
It's funny. Yeah, they're like, are you analyzing me right now? I'm
Yeah.
like, nah, dude. I don't work for free. No.
I like that.
Is it weird dating a psychologist? Would you always feel like you're being hyper analyzed by your partner?
Yo, I'd be like, I can't say shit. I'm just gonna nod.
Oh, it's so funny. I mean, I think that I have helped my partner's career. Like, I really do, because he's in tech and he's a people manager.
Yeah.
And I think, like, there's a lot about our jobs that are very similar of, like, you're basically a surrogate parent to people without, like, saying you're a surrogate parent.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's, like, a lot of, like, okay, how do you coax out of people, like, what it is that they want, and, like, how do they, how do you empower someone to speak up for themselves so they can advocate for what they want within the framework of
the job itself, yeah.
So
the work.
you better tell them, it's like, yo, you owe me for life, man. That's what you tell
I
them.
mean, I tell them that all the time.
Nah.
A couple more of these stigmas that I just want to talk about. With the recent uprising in Asian hate, what's that doing to the community's mental health in general?
Oh, it's not good. I mean, I think there's two major things I've seen. Like, this like very reasonable hypervigilance of people are just like scared to go out. And like, I feel that too sometimes if I'm going to like crowded places, I get nervous and like I'm still trying to live my life as I would otherwise. But, there is a little bit more vigilance of like being aware of my surroundings. But I think another thing that has really happened is the anti-Blackness that has really shown up in our communities. It's so easy to point to the individuals and not the system.
Yeah, that's so true. I've had this it's like a really awkward conversation having someone like, Asian friends. The first thing they'll be like, oh, but look who's doing it. I'm like, dude, see, that's why it's getting worse, man.
Yeah.
That you just can't. So yeah, it's really hard to be like the bigger person sometimes and try to be understanding.
Yeah. And I mean, truly, it's how white supremacy is designed, right? This divide and conquer mentality. Like the model minority myth was created to pit our communities against each other.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways. And whenever you see these like isolated incidents that get a lot of media representation, like, yes, we want to bring awareness to it, but there's also so many other incidents that are perpetrated by white people that we don't hear about as much. And really it is white supremacy that like maintains it. And white supremacy goes way beyond skin color. It's an ideology of like scarcity and
yeah, it's kind of like, we're all minorities. It's like, yo, we're in the same shit together, man. Trust me, we have the same exact fucking problems that you have. Like, bullshit does not discriminate.
That's true.
That's what it needs to be more about.
Yeah.
We kind of lost that now.
Our liberations are tied up together.
I guess one positive I'll take from all this is it kind of has forced us to address our own mental health.
Yeah.
I've never seen this topic come across as strongly as it has because of the rise in Asian hate more recently.
Yeah. If you have to do like glass half full, you're absolutely right, man. I mean, I work in the restaurant, so I end really late, and sometimes I'll do go out, and just even for my friends and stuff, like, hey, like, text me when you get home, please.
Yeah, we take care of each other a bit more now, which I think is definitely a good takeaway.
Yeah. Obviously has its negatives. Like, how do you tell someone just to combat that then?
I think it's a balance, like being aware of your surroundings, having a plan B, like carrying your pepper spray or your taser or whatever you need to do, right? Like doing what you need and what you can to be proactive about your safety and the safety of other people around you, choosing the Uber instead of the public transportation, whatever.
Yes.
Doing all that. And then also like saying like, but I'm still going to live my life and make those choices and, combat like catastrophizing thoughts of like worst case scenarios. Cause there's always going to be worst case scenarios. Yeah. And I think about like, okay, if I am going to actually enjoy my time here on earth, it's not going to be like,
living in fear.
Hunkered down, right? Living in fear.
Yeah. F that. I talked with my father about that, like, Dad, what about the climate that's going on in New York now? And then my dad, the funny thing is, he's like, man, do you know what New York was like in the 80s and the 90s, man?
I mean,
It's always a
that's
roller
true.
coaster, yeah.
Yeah, he says that. It's like, yo, man, it's all about perspective, man. Like when I first came here, and then he starts talking about the whole like,
The old stories he used to have.
yeah, exactly. That made me feel better though. He's like, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, and you're always gonna deal with this kind of stuff. It was just nice hearing, someone that's been through it and, seeing it. And he's just like, yo, F that, man. I worked too hard and lived this long to like have something else like push me out.
I love that. He's taking up space. Yeah.
He my dad, yeah. You'll love it. Yeah, he's definitely that kind of guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your fear, your feelings in general are not inherently good or bad. I think emotions themselves are not.
Yeah.
It's just how you react to them.
Yeah. And we have so much more information now than we ever have had before. So like, that's another important perspective. Like, it seems like all of these things are happening everywhere, but like, bad things have happened forever.
Yeah. Doc, I'm sure there's times where you probably don't feel at your absolute best.
Yeah.
Do you have any things that you like to do specifically for self-care?
Yeah. I mean, I go to therapy every week. I have, long-term therapy, and I think I will always be in therapy because it keeps me accountable. I can't like ask my clients to like pay this fee, do this work, and like not do it myself. So I think that's a huge part of, my self-care. And the more that I learn about myself and my relationships and my own healing, the better I can be for my clients. And then like physical activity, I can't overstate the necessity of moving your bodies, especially these days when we're just like floating heads. Right. Go on your walk, get your exercise in. Like we need to move our bodies.
Yeah.
I guess it's both surprising and it's really nice to hear that a therapist herself is going to see a therapist on a regular basis. Not because you think you need help directly right now, but just to keep yourself accountable, like you said.
Yeah. And I mean, there's been times in my life where I have had like major mental health crises where I did need, very specific targeted help.
Yeah.
And I think being able to talk about that and normalize that, and like, my daughter goes to therapy and she's lives a pretty charmed life, but she's learning from such a young age that like, this is normal and okay. And I can develop the vocabulary to do this and like seek help when I need it. I think that's really rich, like off and on, like I go to couples therapy with my husband, like, so like we just like therapy is a big part of our lives. And I think it's just something that we do. It's not like oh my God, like we're in crisis type.
It's not just something that you take when things are at its worst.
Yeah.
Therapy is not just meant for you when you think you're at a low point. Therapy can be meant for you just to maintain your current good mood.
Yeah. And it works better, right? Like, because when you're in crisis, you're just trying to get back to baseline. But when things are okay and you're going to therapy, then you elevate the baseline.
That's a good point. I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I still have that idea where like going to therapy is like pressing the fire escape or grabbing the fire extinguisher because it's like, oh shit, the car's on fire. Instead of getting the car checked up like I should have, got the oil change. It's like, oh, now my thing's all totally fired.
Good point.
Yeah.
The other thing I took from all that was that if you think you're stubbornly smart enough to figure out your own mental health, Doctor here has a PhD and still is smart to know that there are limitations to what she knows about how to take care of herself. You cannot be as smart as her and think that you have things all figured out on your own.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of that. I'm not smart enough to think that I need.
Oh.
I'm the opposite of that. I'm like, oh, do I? Nah, I don't think so.
Is there any other stigmas within our community that I have not touched on today that you would like to talk about?
I think one thing we don't talk about enough is this comparison of like this hierarchy of suffering. Well, like I'm, suffering in these ways, but like there's also so many people out there who have it way worse, who are like, hungry and don't even have the basics met. And therefore like, I don't want to clog up resources. But like, honestly, you suffering in addition to their suffering doesn't decrease the suffering. Just because somebody else is suffering more doesn't mean that you don't also deserve care.
That's been happening a lot, especially with like the Asian hate crimes and stuff. I don't know why I do this sometimes, but I'll read these comments when there's like this video and then it's about people comparing about their, suffering. You're allowed to suffer. Like, it's okay. Let's just suffer together sometimes and, try to help each other.
It's like one-upping each other with our trauma.
Yeah.
Like, there's no winning. There's no oppression Olympics medal. Like,
yeah, that's so true. It's like, it's fourth quarter. Who's down right now? Oh, it's the Asians. I just saw something. It's like, why are they doing that shit?
I want to wrap this up with one final question. I think this is a positive. There is this generational change. I think younger Asian people, yes, have that hustle mindset, but they are willing to talk more openly about their feelings. Have you seen that same change with younger Asian people these days?
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting. And it's like, it's age, but it's also generational status or acculturation. So like first generation people tend to come to me with like this crisis thing. And then they like, feel better in that way. And then they're like, okay, I'm done now. Like I don't need to
Thank you.
continue
Bye-bye.
on and everything. Thank you. Like this thing is fixed. Whereas I feel like there's this hunger for like second generation, like people who maybe didn't get that level of emotional attunement and attachment, from their parents, they come in and they stay for the long-term work where they just like really want to like, not just like fix the leak in their house, but like examine the plumbing of their entire home and neighborhood. That's rich. That's deep, satisfying work that I think like that's like where you heal the generational wounds and you become a better ancestor.
That's good. We always shit on Gen Zers, but we'll give them one gold star this time.
Yeah.
Okay, Doc. We like to wrap up every single podcast with a segment that we call ranting and raving. It's just where we and the guests each take a turn to rant about something crappy going on in our lives or rave about something good. Most of the time, we're just bitching about something.
Yeah.
Ben, you want to start this off?
It's been a while. I gave it some time and patience. Paper straws.
Wait, what?
Paper straws.
Paper straws.
Yeah,
Okay.
like obviously plastic's bad for the environment. You
Yes.
know, microplastics in our sushi and all that good stuff now, right?
Okay.
I just try to opt not using it, but once it's in there too long, now it's just part of the drink. It just disintegrates. Can't even like slurp with it.
I guess in some ways it's fiber then.
Oh, it's like Metamucil in my cold brew and
There
shit.
you go. You're getting a plus benefit. You just don't use the paper straw
I
then?
don't. So every time they give it, I'll just be like, oh, no, it's okay. And I'll give it back.
So how do you drink your drink?
If it's a lid, I'll just pull it up and drink it. And if I'm on a train, I'm playing that, fine line of like, shit,
You're
I'm going
gonna spill it on your
to
face.
spill it on my crotch or something, or my face. So yeah, paper straws.
Good for the environment, but not good for my co-host, I guess.
Yeah.
Doc, do you want to go or should I go first?
You go.
I'll go first. Okay. I'm not sure if you watch movies or at least Marvel movies, but Doctor Strange was out last week and I haven't seen the movie yet and I don't want to get spoiled. I hate people on the internet who do this no spoiler thing, but then the thumbnail to whatever their video is basically spoils the movie.
Yeah.
So like for instance, if there's like a secret person that's like a spoiler to be in that movie, they'll put that person's face and then they'll write no spoiler review. It's like, dude, you literally put the guy's face. Just because you wrote no spoiler doesn't mean I can't see it.
That's happened to me. Yeah.
And I haven't seen the movie yet. So I'm trying to avoid YouTube and social media for at least a couple more days until I see the movie. Yeah, please
Good call.
don't spoil movies.
Come on, guys.
What about you, Doc? Anything good? Anything bad?
I recently saw Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Great movie.
Hell
because
yeah.
my clients were like, have you seen this? I need to talk about this in therapy.
Yo.
And I saw it. Oh my God, it was so good. And it was
so
so
fucking good.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about our plight. It's the generational trauma story. And, Joy is the cycle breaker. And
Yeah.
and I just feel like how many of us have this everything bagel that like
Yeah.
just carry with us, this like nihilism, this deep like generational trauma body that we just like haul, and like how there are times we just want to get like sucked into it and just like fuck it all.
Yes.
It's such a funny, quirky movie, but it says so much about our lives.
Yeah. And Michelle Yeoh, holy crap, her
Oh my
performance in
God,
it,
yes.
her range in that, just the way she was doing it, was her best work, man.
Yeah, it was great. Oh my God.
Man, Doc, you're cool, yo. I'm so glad we talked about that movie.
Hot dog fingers.
The hot
Yes,
the hot dog fingers.
yes.
Was it thumb kung fu and everything bagels?
I'm thinking about
Yeah.
the scene with the dudes that put up the things up their butts.
Butt plugs.
Oh,
Butt plugs.
the
Butt plugs.
I guess I'm kind of spoiling. I'm that dude that's spoiling. My bad, dude.
I don't think saying butt plugs is going to spoil anything for the movie.
That is true. That was like, damn, yo.
It's gonna build intrigue. People are like, "Ooh, butt plugs are in this."
Maybe there you go.
Wow.
The plug for the butt plugs.
The bug. Okay, Doc. It was really great having you on today. It was a great
Yeah.
conversation. We both had a lot of fun. How much is your copay?
That's a conversation for a whole nother
Okay,
day.
okay,
I'm
fine.
not on insurance panels.
Fine.
Well, we can Venmo you.
We'll do a payment plan, if anything. For those on the internet that are interested, where can they find you and everything that you're about?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram, Dr. Han Ren, drhanren.com.
And if someone actually wants to become a patient of yours, is that something that they can do?
I'm currently not taking clients, but I do own a group practice and I have colleagues in my practice who are. So if you're in Texas, hit us up.
Where can they find your practice? I mean?
Pivot Psychology, ATX.com. That's my practice's website.
Perfect.
Nice.
I'm glad we got to talk about a lot of different things today. There are a lot of points that you talked about today that I never even, I guess, verbalized, but hearing them said out loud adds an extra layer.
I gotta say, when you said that golden handcuff thing, I was like, damn, that's a good one, dog. I was like, shit, man.
Yeah.
Brain, yo. She got that unagi. She got that unagi, man.
You can find us on all the social medias at Workstation Pod. We're on every single social media at Workstation Pod. Feel free to slide into our DMs. Let us know what's going on. It's very nice to hear from all of you. In the meantime, we'll catch you guys next week. Bye.
Peace.
Bye.